Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. I'm here at Digital Health Week New Zealand, hosted by HiNZ, and I'm here in the Imprivata booth. Imprivata are THT Plus partners, and I'm joined by Jamie Robertson from Imprivata. Hey guys, how you going?
Doing really well, thanks. How about you?
Really good, thank you. Really good. And I've got the good representation from locally and across the board, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about you both and a bit about what you do at Imprivata. So, start with you.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my name's Jason Potts. I'm a clinical workflow specialist here at Imprivata. What that means is that I go around to hospitals and I do site visits. I walk through, I talk to their end users, their doctors, nurses, pharmacists. I figure out what they're doing, why they're doing it, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they finding the workarounds to make their jobs easier? And then I give back reports on how they can make things better. The other big part of my job is then I take feedback from those people on how we can continue to make our products better. A little bit more background on how I can do that. Well, I'm a practicing hospital pharmacist. So I've been a hospital pharmacist working mainly in critical care and the emergency rooms for the last 15 years across mostly the United States. And I continue to practice where I live today in South Dakota.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason. What about yourself, Jamie?
Hi, I'm the Principal Solution Engineer for Imprivata in Australia. So I've been down here now for 9 years. Originally started with Imprivata in the UK, so I've been working for the company for 13 years, all in healthcare, delivering our solutions and working with potential customers on how we onboard them with our products and make sure our solutions fit into their environment from a technical perspective. I'm working alongside Jason, so Jason does all the good discovery around the clinical workflow, and then I help architect our solution to make sure it fits the clinical workflow needs in the customer's environment.
Yeah, excellent. Look, you've given us a few insights into the space that you're working in the healthcare side and perhaps the problems you're solving, but unpack it for me a little bit more, Jason. Tell me a bit more about what Imprivata does and the problems it solves.
Yeah, absolutely. So Imprivata, we like to think of ourselves as a digital identity company. So we started with our flagship product, which was Tap and Go, and we've grown greatly since that time. So over the last 20 years, we've really grown our portfolio to encompass all the areas where a person might need to access information within a hospital. Healthcare is really our primary vertical. And so what that means is that we provide simple and secure access everywhere a person needs to go. So imagine I'm a nurse or a doctor. I'm walking in for the day. I need to get in. I need to see my patients. That's my primary goal. But as I approach the computer, I'm requested to type in passwords, remember my usernames, and now those passwords are more complex. Now I'm up to 12, 16, 20 characters. Then after I get into the computer, I have to access all the applications I need, which for a given person could be as many as 12. I've seen one person who's like, I log into 12 applications every time I touch this computer, and there might not be the same passwords. So now I'm remembering different passwords for different programs, and all of that has a cognitive burden associated with it. So instead of thinking about, I'm going to be seeing my patient, what does this patient need from me? I'm thinking, what's the password for this application again? And so what we do is we enable simple and secure access. So you can, instead of typing that password over and over, I can tap my badge at that computer, type my password one time to make sure it is me, and then all those applications will get signed in for me. And so I can get into those computers quickly and easily. That's really the backbone of our product.
Yeah, it's funny. Depending on how involved you are in healthcare, I guess day-to-day operations, some may think, it's just getting into the system. It's that seems like quite a notional thing to do. But I can think of a load of examples where I was going to say minutes, but hours have been wasted because of something really simple like that. It seems like a global issue, but tell me a little bit more, Jamie, about in the local context here in our region, because sometimes for an organisation to provide a solution across the globe, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, we might find, that makes sense in this particular healthcare setting, but it's a little bit different here. It sounds like a bit of a consistent problem, though.
It is, and our solution fits into it well because we've got a very customizable workflow engine. So whether they're using large EMR systems from the US like Epic or Oracle Health, or smaller platforms like Orion here in New Zealand, our solution can integrate with it and do the level of automation so the clinicians can transact their digital identity securely, but not be burdened with multifactor authentication at every point. So getting out your mobile phone and having to approve a push token to get into a person's health record isn't an easily adoptable workflow in a healthcare environment. So we take those barriers away and allow them to do it securely and easily.
Help me understand a little bit more then. The more simple we make it, to log into a system, then my mind goes to, well, if it's so simple to log in, then does that make it less secure? Because if you speak to the security people in the doldrums of a technology company, like, well, sometimes it was like, let's make it as hard as possible to log in, because then it's going to be super secure. If they can't get in, then no one could get into the system. But that's obviously not helpful if you've got patients in front of you and work to be done. Talk to me about how you still make it secure and we're protecting really sensitive healthcare information, but you still need to be able to access the information really quickly. How do you approach that kind of balance?
Yeah, and that comes down to the modalities we support for accessing a desktop. So heavily adopted in most of our installation and customer bases is using the door access card to identify the user. They can walk up to a machine, they can tap on, and then we can challenge for a second factor like a PIN number. But to access a workstation, it's just tapping your ID card, putting a PIN number in. So you're still getting two-factor authentication, which is secure. It's something you have, something you know, but it's something you can transact really easily in a healthcare environment. And we tap on, we tap off, and you can tap over. So you can walk up to a workstation where another user's logged in. You tap your card, and we can very quickly transition you to your individual session. So when you look at a data governance perspective side of it, you know who's transacting the patient data inside the health record. Moving away from a shared account environment where I don't know who is accessing the patient record, where and when.
Yeah. Help me understand the types of healthcare facilities or providers that would utilize this kind of service. Is it the very big hospital systems? Is it the small clinics? Help me understand.
Yeah, I mean, the answer there is all the above. Wherever the problem exists, wherever there's protected health information, you need to keep it secure. And if you're trying to keep it secure, it's going to take longer unless you have a solution like ours to help make it easier. So our initial install base, of course, was highly focused on those large institutions, those hospitals, because they have the need for the infrastructure. But as things have progressed, we've gone out into clinics, all kinds of environments, up to including other commercial environments. So we found that there are other verticals within within the world that have similar requirements. Good examples might be gaming casinos or banking. They need to keep everything secure. They have really sensitive information, and they need to know for certain who's doing it, but they're doing it all the time, so it needs to be simple. So we've had great success going into those verticals as well.
Are there any examples of the names of the hospitals that people might know, or perhaps what things look like prior to implementing the solution and then what it looks like now?
Yeah, for sure. So before a customer onboards with our tap-on, tap-off solution, they commonly use generic accounts for Windows workstations. You go into a hospital environment and there's post-it notes all over the place with passwords written down, so that's inherently insecure in a healthcare environment where you've got patient data. So one of the first customers we onboarded in New Zealand was Canterbury DHB. That was back in 2013. And they went with some cutting-edge technology back then, and we integrated with a virtual desktop environment. So as a clinician or a nurse move around the hospital, they tap their badge onto a workstation, and their complete desktop environment follows them from endpoint to endpoint as they move around the hospital. So the time gains and workflow efficiencies using that configuration can be significant because you remove the need to relaunch your clinical applications at every workstation you go to. This is already running in that BDI environment.
Yeah, and on a more global scale, in the United States, our penetration into the healthcare environments at hospitals is, exceeding 90%. So a large majority of hospital systems in the United States utilize our technology for accessing their systems.
Yeah, interesting. I know a lot of healthcare providers, move between facilities too, and when I guess that makes the problem even more exponential because sometimes you've got different logins depending on the different locations you're logged into. What does that kind of? I guess that's a double prong approach because my mind goes to does it work across? That's quite a transactional question. Does it work across multiple facilities? But what does that onboarding process look like? Because if you're bringing on a new customer, everyone's a little bit different. Sometimes they've got those multiple facilities. There's a lot to kind of, put in the front end. And we know within a technology implementation, if you get that first bit wrong, then it'll kind of is not a successful experience for anyone. How much work do you put in the front end in that onboarding process to make sure it's successful?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest component there is, as Jamie spoke about, we're often using the big three of multi-factor authentication. So it's either something you know, something you have, or something you are. And you need two of those factors in order to satisfy the two-factor authentication. So as far as onboarding, the something you know, obviously you'll be given a password almost always when you onboard, and then you change it immediately. So then you have the something you know, and then the something you are and something you have. So we'll provide you with a physical ID badge from the hospital, which then you enroll to your with using your password to your profile. And then if you are using the something you are, which would be either a facial biometric or fingerprint, then you would enroll that with the supervisor usually, so that we know that it's you enrolling the fingerprint and using it going forward. So as far as going across institutions, most of the time, so you're going to have unique passwords, hopefully, across your institutions. I know all the providers out there are definitely not using the same password over and over again, but it will be tied to a different one of those other two factors. So each system communicates to its own Imprivata server, and so you have your unique identity existing in both of those areas. So for me as a pharmacist, I would walk up, I would use my badge that corresponds to the institution I'm working at to tap, and then I would satisfy a second factor, usually with a PIN or a password, to keep it clear and straight which one I'm working at that time. But it's also been really good for us because there's a word of mouth. When I'm working at one institution and I'm typing my password 500 times a day, and I go to another institution and I'm tapping my badge 500 times a day, suddenly I know what I'm going to be requesting from my IT department because I know which one is much easier for me.
I think about the way that healthcare is delivered and the different modalities of care, and increasingly a lot of care is provided outside of the home, and there's a lot of virtual assistance and sometimes remote triaging, and not always are the providers of healthcare within the four physical walls of the healthcare setting. How do you then, once everything is out there in the virtual world, does that fall outside the scope of what you guys look after, or is that a factor in everything as well?
Yeah, I'll take an initial stab and I'll hand it over to Jamie for a little bit of color, but more and more we're seeing the use of mobile devices as a big component of that care outside of the healthcare traditional setting. And we do have an integration into mobile products, so you can use that same workflow to tap your badge and authenticate into those mobile devices, or to assign a mobile device to you for that day. And it satisfies those same factors and is able to keep things simple and secure. I think there's other pieces to this that include, VPN access and using your private computer. And I'll let Jamie add a little color there.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I think you're right. It comes down to wherever a user needs to transact their digital identity, we can be there to help them. So like you say, triaging in the home, and the Jason referenced shared mobility, we can allow users to tap onto a shared mobile device, whether that's an iOS or Android handset. The same experience you go on a desktop, you can have that on a mobile phone. So, and it becomes even more important on a mobile because those long, complex passwords on a touchscreen are even harder to input. So being able to tap on, have single sign-on on a mobility handset, a tablet, provides real benefit to the end users.
Yeah, and those devices are higher risk from a security standpoint also, because they have, literally, we always say they have feet. Those devices have a way of finding their way, getting lost, put in corners, and so that they represent a higher level of security risk. So it's even more important to keep them secured.
Yeah. And so it sounds like, very focused at what you do at Imprivata, and that's a good way to be able to solve a particular problem. But as we know, within healthcare, needs are changing, technology is evolving, and there's providers always want more from service providers, particularly in this current landscape in New Zealand, where we're going to be needing need to do more with less within healthcare facilities. So if I think about innovation and forward thinking and what people are asking for and where the ball's kind of going for Imprivata, what are the things that you're kind of incorporating and looking at to be able to then continue to serve the need of patients here and abroad?
Well, we continue to grow our healthcare ecosystem partnerships. So we work with a lot of other vendors in the healthcare environment to make sure our solutions are interoperable with their platforms as well. So we're starting to drive a passwordless experience within the healthcare environment for all users, where they don't have to remember or transact passwords anymore. we can take that away from them and make the environment easily accessible and secure. And we're moving towards facial biometric authentication as well. So as we've talked about how we authenticate with an ID card, with a tap and a PIN number or a tap and a password, we're going to bring tap and smile to the desktop so people don't have to input anymore. And that's particularly powerful on a mobile device as well, because a lot of the application vendors are now moving to re-authentication workflows. So you don't have to just authenticate to access the application. If you want to complete a workflow within the application, you've got to authenticate again to prove that you're still the person logged into the system. So being able to do that through facial biometrics on a mobile device that we support today and in the future desktop devices is going to make accessing and transacting digital data so much easier for clinicians.
Yeah. How about you, Jason? Anything else to add to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I would just double down on the passwordless journey. I always emphasize it's a journey because it's not an overnight switch. There's no solution that's available today where we can be tomorrow everyone's going to be passwordless. So you have to kind of start taking steps today, and that's what Imprivata is doing. Because what's really important is if you have to use your password once every 6 months, you'd think that a lot of people are like, oh, that's a huge step forward. But in reality, it's often a step backwards because you've forgotten it by that point. So if it gets too infrequent but still needed, that's a problem. It really has to make your way all the way to that not needing it at all stage. And so for us, that's really about the major stage that we're trying to get to is a stage where end users don't need to know their passwords anymore. They could even theoretically be rotated automatically in the background by the system. At that point, the risk of phishing or any of those types of attacks goes away because the end user couldn't give up their password if they wanted to, and the end user doesn't have to think about it at all. So those two benefits really ties back around to that beginning. Simple and secure access, that's what we're after, and if you can get truly passwordless, nothing's more simple or more secure than that. Yeah.
There's something important in both of those elements too, and the why to get to that point. Yes, on the security side and making data more secure, but you can't overlook that. I think you said cognitive load or the cognitive burden that's placed on people on something that seems quite day-to-day mundane of remembering passwords. But if we're the more load we can take off the clinicians who are already under a lot of strain to be able to deliver care to people who need help, then that's got to have a huge benefit to the system overall. So I can see the importance in doing that. Any other final thoughts or things that you'd hope that people might walk away? You've been speaking with clinicians and providers here at Digital Health Week and well familiar with the needs here in Australia, New Zealand and the region. Any other final thoughts or things you'd hope that those people might take away from this session or come and have a chat with you about in the future?
Yeah, I just think no problem's too big or too small for us. So if you have any workflow issues around accessing and transacting patient data, come and speak to us. We've got solutions for desktops, for thin clients, mobility. We support smart vital sign monitors as well today as they're becoming network connected and start to automate patient data going into the electronic health records. So if you have a workflow issue, come and speak to us, and we've probably got a solution that's going to make the clinicians' lives easier.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And the best way to find some of those ways we can help, honestly, is with a walkthrough. So contact us, Jamie and myself, or one of our counterparts. We'll be happy to come out and walk through, talk to your clinicians, find out what they're doing and why they're doing it, so we can help identify the problems as well as provide solutions to them.
Yeah, amazing. Well, gents, it's been great to catch up and understand where you're at and where you're going with Imprivata, and there's more details for Imprivata on the Talking HealthTech website and in the show notes of this episode. So, Jamie, Jason, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.